The night sky over the jungle was restless. Black clouds rolled above the treetops like angry giants, and the wind carried the smell of rain and danger. Every few seconds, lightning split the sky open, throwing white light over the endless green below. Somewhere on the muddy trail, a lone man walked with careful steps. His coat was soaked through, and his boots sank into the soft earth with each move. He was used to the forest. The buzzing insects, the cries of hidden animals, the sound of rushing water in the distance. None of it scared him. But tonight felt different. He couldn't explain why, but there was a strange tension in the air, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The villagers had spoken about it for days now. Strange sightings near the river, a figure moving through the trees at night. Some said it was a ghost. Others whispered about a wild girl, living alone with no clothes, no home, nothing but the trees to protect her. First, he laughed it off. People in small villages loved stories. They created monsters out of shadows and heroes out of hunters. But now, as he moved deeper into the forest, he wondered if the stories were true. A branch snapped somewhere to his left. He stopped. The rain pattered against the leaves, running down his face. He slowly turned his head, scanning the shadows. His hand tightened on the walking stick he carried, though he wasn't sure what good it would do if something attacked him. Another sound. Light footsteps. Not animal-like. Too soft, too careful. Then came the moment that made his heart stop. A flash of lightning tore across the sky, and there she was, standing on a rock near the river, barely 20 feet away. She was thin, her skin glistening with rain. Her hair was long, dark, tangled, falling over her shoulders. She wore nothing but rough leaves tied clumsily around her, like someone who had never seen real clothes before. But her eyes, they glowed faintly, not with the red shine of a predator, but a soft, golden light that seemed almost otherworldly. For a moment, the man thought she wasn't real. She didn't move, just stood there, staring at him across the rain-filled clearing. Then, as quickly as the lightning had revealed her, darkness fell again. When the next flash came, she was gone. The man stood frozen in the mud. His breath came fast, his heart pounding in his ears. He had seen her. He was sure of it. And she was no ghost. The rain slowed after midnight. By morning, the sun rose weakly through the mist, painting the forest in silver light. The man returned to the same spot by the river. He didn't fully understand why, maybe curiosity, maybe concern, but something told him the girl would come back. Hours passed. He waited. Finally, near the edge of the water, movement caught his eye. She was there. This time she didn't run. She crouched near the river, drinking carefully like an animal afraid of hunters. The sunlight revealed more of her now. Strange markings traced across her arms and shoulders, glowing faintly, almost like the veins of light inside a crystal. She looked so thin. The man slowly reached into his pack. He took out some dried bread and held it out where she could see. Then he stepped back, showing he meant no harm. For a long time she didn't move. Then, slowly, carefully, she crept forward. She picked up the bread like she expected it to vanish any second. She smelled it, then ate in small, quick bites. Her eyes kept flicking toward him, ready to run if he came closer. When she finished, she looked at him again. There was fear there, but also something else. Something he couldn't name. Maybe hope? The man opened his mouth to speak, but stopped. What would he even say? She probably didn't understand his language. Before he could try, a sound ripped through the quiet morning. A low, deep growl from the trees behind her. The girl stiffened. The man saw it too, shadows moving in the undergrowth. Big shapes, gliding silently between the trees. Predators. And they were hunting. The girl turned slowly, her body tense like a cornered deer. The man gripped his stick tighter. He didn't know what was out there yet, but he knew one thing. If those things attacked, she wouldn't stand a chance alone. And for reasons he couldn't explain, he knew he couldn't just leave her here. This was only the beginning. The growl came again, louder this time, rolling through the trees like distant thunder. The man's eyes locked on the shadows behind the girl. Something was moving there, big, fast, and hungry. He had heard about the predators of this jungle. Some looked like wolves, others like giant cats with strange claws and teeth. No one hunted at night because of them. But this was morning, and they were still here. The girl froze where she stood, the last piece of bread clutched in her hand. Her glowing eyes darted toward the trees. She wasn't just scared. She was ready to run. Her whole body tensed like a wild animal waiting for the right moment to escape. The man gripped his stick tighter. His heart pounded. He was only one man, and whatever was in those trees could tear him apart in seconds. But leaving her here, this thin, half-starved girl with no weapon, no clothes, no help, felt impossible. The bushes ahead shook. 2 glowing red eyes appeared in the shadows. Then came another pair, and another. 3 predators, low to the ground, moving in a circle toward the girl. Their bodies were long and sleek, their shoulders rolling with each silent step. Rainwater dripped from their black fur, and their teeth glimmered as they growled softly, ready to attack. The girl backed away slowly, her feet splashing in the shallow water. The man moved without thinking. He ran forward, splashing across the river between her and the beasts. He raised his stick high and shouted, loud enough to shake the trees. The predators paused. They were not used to humans getting in their way. One of them snarled, a deep, rattling sound that made the man's skin crawl. But he stood his ground. Go! He shouted, waving the stick. Get out! Of course, they didn't understand his words. But his voice, his movements, the sudden noise, it was enough to make them hesitate. The girl stood behind him now, her eyes wide. She didn't run. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe she was too shocked to move. Finally, the biggest predator growled one last time, then slowly backed into the trees. The others followed, their red eyes fading into the darkness. The man didn't move until the jungle was silent again. Only then did he lower his stick, his arms trembling from the rush of fear. He turned to look at the girl. She was staring at him, her strange golden eyes fixed on his face. Rain dripped from her hair, running down her arms. She didn't speak, didn't move, but something in her gaze had changed. Before, there had been fear. Now there was something else, something like trust. The man pointed toward the village, trying to tell her she should come with him. It wasn't safe here. He even took out more food, hoping it would make her understand. But she didn't move. Instead, she pointed at herself, then at the forest, shaking her head slowly. She wanted to stay. The man sighed. He couldn't force her. But leaving her out here alone after what just happened felt wrong. He pulled off his coat and held it out to her. She looked at it strangely, as if she didn't understand what it was for. He walked closer, slowly, so she wouldn't run. Then he draped it over her shoulders. She froze but didn't pull away. The coat was far too big for her thin frame, but it covered her better than the leaves she had been wearing. For the first time, she wasn't shivering from the rain. He stayed with her a while, sitting on a fallen log while she crouched nearby, eating the rest of the food he gave her. She didn't talk. Maybe she didn't know how. Maybe she didn't speak his language at all. But every so often, her eyes would flick toward him, as if studying him. He realized something then. She wasn't just a wild girl. Those glowing markings on her skin, the strange color of her eyes, the way she had survived alone in this dangerous jungle. She wasn't human. At least not fully. What was she doing here? Where had she come from? The questions burned in his mind, but there were no answers yet. When he finally stood to leave, she didn't run this time. She stayed where she was, watching him. He pointed toward the village again. Tomorrow, he said softly, though she couldn't understand. I'll come back tomorrow. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she nodded once. A small, cautious nod. The first sign that maybe, just maybe, she trusted him. But neither of them saw the dark figure watching from far above the trees. A small drone, silent as the wind, hovered in the gray sky. Its red eye glowed faintly as it recorded everything. And somewhere far away, someone was watching the girl on a screen and marking her location. This was only the beginning. The next day, the man returned to the jungle early in the morning. The air was heavy with mist, and the trees dripped with last night's rain. The ground smelled of wet earth, and birds called from far above, their cries echoing through the green maze. He carried food again, bread, fruit, a bottle of clean water. He wasn't sure if the girl would come back. After all, she had survived here alone for who knew how long. Maybe she didn't need him, but deep down he felt she would come. And she did. He saw her near the same riverbank, crouched low like before, her long hair hanging around her face. She wore the coat he had given her, though it was too big and slipped off one shoulder. The sight made him smile a little. When she noticed him, she didn't run this time. She stood still, watching carefully as he set the food down on a rock and stepped back, giving her space. Slowly, she approached, her bare feet making no sound on the wet ground. She ate quietly, glancing at him now and then, like she was trying to understand him. The man wanted to ask so many things. Who was she? Where had she come from? Was she alone? But the words felt useless when she couldn't answer. Instead, he pointed at himself and said, "Human." Then he pointed at her with a question in his eyes. For a long moment, she only looked at him. Then she touched her chest lightly and whispered a single sound. It was soft, broken, like she hadn't spoken in a very long time. He couldn't tell if it was her name or her people's name, but hearing her voice at all was a surprise. Suddenly, the jungle went silent. The birds stopped calling. The wind died down. Even the river seemed to grow quieter. The man noticed it first. He had lived near the forest long enough to know when something was wrong. The girl noticed too. She froze, her glowing eyes scanning the trees. Then came the sound. A low crack like heavy weight pressing on branches. Another crack. Something big was moving through the forest. The man grabbed his stick, every muscle tense. His heart beat hard in his chest as he looked toward the trees. The girl backed toward him slowly, clutching the coat around her. Then they saw it. A massive shape stepped out from the shadows. Its body was covered in dark fur, muscles moving under its wet skin. Its face was like a wolf but longer, sharper, with teeth too big for its mouth. And behind it 2 more appeared. 3 of them, the same predators from yesterday. But this time, they weren't hunting from the shadows. They were here to kill. The man stepped in front of the girl. He waved his stick, shouting, trying to scare them like before. It didn't work. The beasts moved slowly, spreading out to trap them. Their red eyes glowed faintly in the shadows. One growled deep in its throat, the sound vibrating in the air. The girl's breathing quickened. He could feel her fear even though she made no sound. Then the first beast charged. The man swung his stick with all his strength. It cracked against the creature's head, but the beast barely flinched. It snapped its jaws, missing his arm by inches. The girl grabbed his hand suddenly and pulled him toward the riverbank. "Run!" she whispered in a broken voice. They ran. Branches whipped at their faces as they pushed through the jungle. The beasts followed, fast and silent. The man's lungs burned. The girl was quick, moving like she had lived in these trees forever, but even she was breathing hard. They found a narrow path between 2 cliffs. The girl pulled him into it, and they squeezed through just as the beasts lunged behind them. The narrow walls slowed the creatures, buying them precious seconds. Up ahead, the man saw the dark opening of a cave hidden behind vines. The girl ran straight inside. He followed, and together they stumbled into the shadows. The cave was cold and damp. Water dripped from the ceiling in slow drops. They crouched behind a pile of rocks, listening as the beasts sniffed outside. Their claws scraped against stone, searching for a way in. The man's heart hammered in his chest. The girl sat close, shivering slightly but silent. After what felt like hours, the beasts finally gave up and moved away, their growls fading into the distance. The man let out a slow breath. They were safe, for now. In the flickering light from the cave entrance, the man looked at the girl. The strange markings on her skin glowed faintly, like soft blue fire under her skin. Up close, he noticed small scars across her arms, like she had been hurt before. She met his eyes for a moment, then looked away quickly, curling into herself. She had survived here alone with those monsters. For how long? And why? The man didn't have answers. But one thing was clear. This girl didn't belong in the jungle. And he couldn't leave her here anymore. Far above the trees, the silent drone still hovered, watching everything. And whoever was controlling it had just seen the girl lead a human into hiding. This was only the beginning. The cave was dark and cold. Water dripped slowly from the ceiling, and the air smelled of earth and rain. The man sat near the entrance, holding his stick tightly, listening for any sound outside. The beasts had left, but the memory of their glowing red eyes stayed in his mind. The girl sat a few feet away, wrapped in his coat. Her glowing skin markings were faint but visible in the shadows, like stars hidden behind thin clouds. She hugged her knees close to her chest, shivering slightly even though the rain had stopped. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, the man said softly, "It's not safe here." She looked at him with those strange golden eyes but said nothing. He wasn't even sure she understood. He pointed outside, toward the jungle, then shook his head. Then he pointed in the opposite direction, where the town was, and made a walking gesture with his fingers. "You come with me," he said slowly. "Village. Safe." The girl stared at his hands, trying to understand. She hesitated. Her eyes flicked toward the jungle, then back to him. There was fear in her face. Not of him, but of something else. Maybe of the world beyond these trees. Finally, she shook her head. The man sighed. He couldn't leave her here. Not after what had just happened. Those beasts would return. And next time, they might not be so lucky. He opened his pack and took out the last of his food: bread, dried meat, and water. He pushed it toward her. "Eat," he said softly. She took the bread slowly, still watching him. When she finished, she spoke a single word in a voice so quiet he almost didn't hear it. "Why?" It wasn't clear if she was asking why he helped her or why he wanted her to leave. The man didn't have a simple answer. He looked at her for a moment and said, "Because you need help." She lowered her eyes, silent again. When the rain finally stopped, the man stood. He pointed to the town again. "Come," he said. "No safe here." This time she didn't shake her head. She hesitated, then rose slowly to her feet. Together they left the cave. The forest was quiet after the storm. Mist floated between the trees, and the ground was soft under their feet. The girl moved silently, like she had been born here, but the man kept glancing around nervously. Every shadow felt like it was watching. They crossed the river where he had first seen her. The sunlight broke through the clouds now, turning the water into silver light. For the first time, he saw her clearly in the daylight. She was young, maybe barely an adult, thin from hunger, her skin marked with faint blue lines that glowed softly when she moved. Not human, at least not completely. He wondered where she had come from. He wondered what had happened to her. As they walked, he noticed her glancing at him sometimes, her face unreadable. Maybe she was wondering the same about him, why a stranger would risk his life for her. They stopped at a small clearing so she could drink water from his bottle. She held it awkwardly, like she had never seen one before. The man realized then just how much of the world she didn't know. Hours passed before they reached the edge of the jungle. Beyond the last line of trees, the open land stretched toward the small town in the distance. The girl stopped. She looked at the buildings, the smoke rising from chimneys, the faint noise of voices and vehicles. She had never seen anything like it. Her eyes were wide, almost frightened. She took a step back. The man turned to her. "It's okay," he said softly. "Safe. Food. Clothes." But she didn't move. For someone who had lived her whole life in the wild, the town must have felt like another planet. They reached the first building just before sunset. People stopped to stare. The girl hid behind the man's shoulder, clutching the coat tighter around her. "Where you find her?" someone whispered. The man didn't answer. He led her quickly to the small shop at the corner. The shopkeeper's eyes widened as they stepped in. "She needs clothes," the man said, placing money on the counter. The shopkeeper nodded slowly and brought out a simple dress. The girl looked at it, confused. The man smiled gently. "For you," he said, pointing at the dress, then at her. She touched the fabric carefully, like it was something precious. For a moment, she just held it, staring at herself in the shop's small mirror. For the first time, she saw herself not as a creature of the jungle, but as someone else. Someone who might belong somewhere. But outside, in the growing darkness, a black car stopped at the edge of town. Two men stepped out, dressed in dark uniforms. They carried strange devices that glowed faintly in the night, and they were asking about a girl with glowing skin. This was only the beginning. The sun was setting when the man led the alien girl into the small town. The orange light touched the rooftops, the narrow streets, the people hurrying home before dark. For the girl, everything felt strange. She stayed close behind the man, hiding slightly under the coat he had given her. Her glowing eyes kept darting left and right, watching the cars, the lights, the people carrying baskets of food. Her bare feet touched the stone street carefully, like she was walking on some unknown surface for the first time. The man stopped at a small clothing shop near the corner. The shopkeeper, an older woman with tired eyes, looked up in surprise when they entered. "She needs clothes," the man said, putting money on the counter. The shopkeeper stared at the girl's glowing skin markings and wide, fearful eyes but didn't ask questions. She handed over a simple dress and shoes. The girl held the dress like it was made of glass. Her fingers touched the soft fabric slowly, as if she couldn't believe it was real. The man pointed toward the changing room. "For you," he said softly. She hesitated, then went inside. When she came out, the girl was no longer the wild creature from the jungle. The simple blue dress covered her thin frame. The shoes looked too big, but she wore them anyway. Her long dark hair was messy, but the man bought a small comb, and she watched curiously as he showed her how to use it. For the first time since he had met her, she looked almost human. People outside stared through the shop window. Whispers spread quickly. "Who is she?" someone asked. "Where did she come from?" another said. The man ignored them. He bought her a small scarf too, so she could cover her head and hide some of her glowing skin from curious eyes. They left the shop as the streetlights flickered on. The girl stayed close to the man, clutching the small bag of clothes he had bought her. She looked at everything, the lights, the noise, the smell of food coming from nearby stalls, with wide eyes full of wonder. But beneath that wonder was fear. She had spent her whole life, maybe years, in the silence of the jungle. This world of noise and lights was too much, too fast. The man noticed it. He slowed his steps, keeping close to her so she wouldn't panic. They stopped at a small roadside cafe. The man bought food, warm bread, soup, and a cup of tea for himself. The girl sat across from him, still glancing around nervously like she expected danger to come any second. When the food arrived, she ate slowly at first, then faster as the hunger took over. The man watched her quietly. Every time she lifted her eyes to him, there was a question there. "Why are you helping me?" He didn't have an easy answer. He only knew one thing. This girl was alone, scared, hunted by things he didn't understand, and she needed someone. But outside, danger was already moving closer. A black car had parked at the edge of town. Two men in dark uniforms stepped out. They wore no badges, but they carried small devices that glowed faintly in the dark. They went from shop to shop, showing a picture on a small screen. A girl with glowing markings. "Have you seen her?" they asked. Some people nodded toward the clothing shop. The men turned in that direction. Inside the cafe, the girl suddenly stiffened. Her glowing eyes locked on the street outside. The man followed her gaze and saw the two strangers walking quickly toward the shopkeeper, asking questions. Something in his chest tightened. He didn't know who they were. Soldiers? Scientists? Hunters? But he knew one thing. They weren't here to help her. The girl rose slowly from the table, clutching the bag of clothes. Her body was tense, ready to run. The man leaned close and whispered, "It's okay. We'll leave." Quietly. They slipped out the back door of the cafe, moving through a narrow alley that led toward the quieter side of town. The men in black didn't see them yet, but the man knew it was only a matter of time. As they walked quickly through the dim streets, the girl grabbed his arm suddenly. She pointed to herself, then to the men in black far behind them. "Take me back," she said in broken words, her voice trembling. The man shook his head. "No, safe, I promise." But her eyes said she didn't believe safety was possible. Not anymore. They reached the edge of town and slipped into an abandoned storage shed. The man closed the door quietly. Through a crack in the wall, he saw the black car moving slowly along the road, its lights sweeping the buildings like searching eyes. The girl sat on the floor, hugging her knees, the scarf slipping off her head. The man knew now this wasn't just about wild animals or a lost girl. Someone wanted her, someone dangerous, and they would not stop until they had her. Far away, in a dark room filled with screens, a man in a suit watched the live drone feed from above the town. "Target located," he said calmly. "Prepare to move in." This was only the beginning. The storage shed was quiet except for the sound of their breathing. The man sat near the door, watching the road through a narrow crack in the wall. The black car was still there, moving slowly, its headlights cutting across the dark street like searching eyes. The girl sat in the corner, hugging her knees, her glowing skin faint under the scarf he had given her. She didn't speak. She just stared at the floor, her face pale and tired. The man could feel her fear. It was heavy in the air, like the thick heat before a storm. Finally, he said softly, "They want you, don't they?" The girl lifted her eyes slowly. She didn't answer at first. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the scarf closer around herself. The man moved a little closer, careful not to scare her. "Who are they?" he asked. "Why are they looking for you?" For a long moment the girl said nothing. Her golden eyes flicked toward the door, then back to him. "They took me," she whispered finally. Her voice was rough, like she hadn't used it much before. The man frowned. "Took you? From where?" She hesitated, as if the words were hard to find. Then she said slowly, "A place far, cold walls, bright lights. They hurt us." The man felt a chill run through him. "Us?" She nodded weakly. "Others, like me. Some, not alive now." Her eyes lowered again, and he saw the faint scars across her arms, half hidden under the coat. It hit him then. She hadn't just been living in the jungle. She had escaped from somewhere, from someone. And those men outside, they weren't here to rescue her. They were here to take her back. The man clenched his fists. He didn't know much about her world, but he knew one thing. He wasn't letting her fall into their hands again. He looked at her carefully. "Why you?" he asked. "Why are you so important to them?" The girl stayed silent for a moment, her eyes lost in some distant memory. Finally, she whispered, "I carry something in my blood. Power." She touched one of the glowing markings on her arm. It pulsed faintly under her fingers, like living light beneath her skin. The man stared at it. "Is that why they hurt you?" She nodded once. "They want it. To make more like me." Her voice cracked slightly on the last words. The man felt anger rising in his chest. She was young, barely grown, and yet she had been treated like some experiment. He didn't know who these people were, but he knew what they wanted wasn't good. Outside, the black car stopped again. Two men in dark uniforms stepped out. They carried small devices that gave off a faint hum, scanning the streets. "They are coming," the girl whispered, her body tense again. The man looked out the crack in the wall. He saw them talking to a local shopkeeper, showing a picture on their device. The shopkeeper pointed in this direction. They would be here soon. The man turned to the girl. "We have to leave," he said. "Now." But she didn't move. Her eyes were wide, full of fear. "They find me, always," she said softly, shaking her head. "No place safe." The man crouched in front of her, so she had to look at him. "Listen," he said firmly but gently. "You are not going back to them. Not while I'm here. Do you understand?" For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then slowly she nodded. They slipped out the back of the shed, moving through narrow alleys. The streets were nearly empty now, the town quiet under the rising moon. The girl stayed close, her bare feet silent on the stone. The man carried his stick like a weapon, ready for trouble. Behind them, the two men in black were getting closer. They reached the edge of town where the road turned into open fields. Beyond that lay the dark hills and freedom. But as they started across the field, a sharp beam of light cut through the night. "Stop!" a voice shouted. The black car had found them. The girl froze like a hunted animal. The man grabbed her hand. "Run!" They ran across the open field as the car roared to life behind them, headlights swinging wildly through the dark. Shots rang out, not bullets but something stranger. Small darts glowing blue slammed into the ground near their feet. The girl gasped as one flew past her head, close enough to feel the air burn. The man pulled her behind a low stone wall, both of them breathing hard. The men in black were coming fast now, their weapons glowing in the dark. The girl clutched his arm. "They take me, kill you," she whispered, her voice shaking. The man's jaw tightened. "Not tonight," he said. They moved through the tall grass, keeping low. The girl's glowing markings were too bright, too easy to see. The man grabbed some mud from the ground and smeared it across her arms and face. "Hide the light," he said. She understood and covered the rest herself. The glow dimmed under the dark mud. For now. By the time they reached the hills, the car was still circling the field below, searching. The man and the girl slipped into the trees beyond, finally out of sight. But both of them knew this was not over. Whoever these people were, they would not stop. And the man had a feeling this girl's secret was bigger than anything he could imagine. This was only the beginning. The night was cold in the hills. Wind moved through the tall grass like whispers in the dark. The man and the girl crouched under a rocky ledge, watching the lights of the black car far below. The men in black were still searching. Their weapons glowed faintly in the dark, and small drones circled above like silent birds. The girl sat close to the man, her thin frame trembling. The mud on her arms had hidden most of her glowing markings, but the faint light still shone through in some places. "They will find us," she said softly, her broken voice full of fear. The man looked at her and shook his head. "Not if we move fast. We go over the hills. There's a road on the other side. We can reach the next town before morning." She stared at him like she wanted to believe it but didn't know how. They moved slowly through the rocks, keeping low. The moonlight gave them just enough to see. Every sound felt loud, the crunch of gravel under their feet, the distant call of night birds, the hum of the drones searching for them. Then came the sharp beam of a spotlight. It cut across the hills, sliding toward them like a white blade. "Down!" the man whispered sharply. They pressed flat against the ground as the light passed over the rocks above their heads. Voices carried through the night. "They're close," one man called. "Check the ridge." The girl gripped the man's hand tightly. He felt her trembling and knew she was close to panic. He leaned close and whispered, "We keep moving. Stay low. Stay quiet." They slipped along the side of the hill, moving through shadows. But the men in black were fast. Two of them appeared on the ridge above, their dark figures blocking out the moonlight. One carried a weapon glowing faint blue. "Stop!" the man shouted. The girl froze, fear in her eyes. The man didn't stop. He pulled her behind a boulder as the weapon fired. A dart hit the stone and exploded with a sharp crack, spraying blue sparks across the ground. They ran again, down the slope toward a narrow gorge. The gorge was dark, the walls high on both sides. Wind whistled through it like voices. The man led the girl through the rocks, their footsteps echoing softly. Behind them, the men in black followed fast. The girl stopped suddenly. "No," she whispered. "They don't stop. They never stop." Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dark as she looked at the man. "If they catch me, they make more. Like me. Hurt more." The man understood then. She wasn't just running for herself. She was running for everyone like her, so they wouldn't suffer what she had suffered. At the end of the gorge, the path split in two. The man grabbed her hand to go left, but she pulled back. "No," she said firmly. "I finished this." He turned to her. "What do you mean?" Her glowing markings brightened under the mud, pulsing like fire waking up inside her. The man stared. "What are you doing?" She met his eyes. For the first time, she didn't look afraid. "They made me a weapon," she said slowly. "Now, I use it." The men in black appeared at the mouth of the gorge, weapons ready. "Don't move," one shouted. The girl stepped out from behind the rocks. Her glowing markings burned brighter, spreading across her skin like living light. The men hesitated. "Take her alive," one shouted. Too late. The ground trembled under their feet. A wave of light burst from the girl's body, sweeping across the gorge like a storm. The weapons sparked and went dead. The drones above fell from the sky like broken birds. The men staggered back, blinded by the sudden light. When it faded, they were on the ground, unconscious, their weapons smoking. The girl collapsed to her knees, breathing hard. The glow on her skin dimmed again, leaving only faint traces. The man ran to her side. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head slowly. "Just tired." He looked at the fallen men, then back at her. "We have to go. More will come." She nodded weakly. By morning, they reached the next town. The girl wore the scarf tight around her face to hide the faint glow. The man found a small transport leaving for the border and paid for 2 seats. As the vehicle started moving, the girl sat beside him, watching the hills fade in the distance. For the first time since he had met her, she didn't look afraid. She looked free. Far behind them, in the ruined gorge, soldiers searched the wreckage of the drones. One of them spoke into a radio. "She used the power," he said. "We couldn't stop her. She's gone." The voice on the other end was cold. "Find her, no matter how far she runs." But for now, the girl was safe. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't running alone.